Welcome back to Encyclopedia.Zone. My name is Dr. Don Jolly. I am a freelance writer whose work has appeared in Penthouse Magazine, the Los Angeles Review of Books, among others. I am also the editor-in-chief of Encyclopedia.Zone, the internet's premier home for literary shitposting. And it has been way too long since I've gotten a chance to say this, but there is brand new HTML content over at Encyclopedia.Zone. So point your browser over to Encyclopedia.Zone right now, and you will be able to read HRC 2020 Part 2, A Cure for Hate. Now, HRC 2020, if you like the political content that we've been doing on the channel, HRC 2020 is my ongoing series of investigations of the religion of American politics as instantiated in the 2020 race. This is a nearly 40-page long deep dive into the construction of the various media and cosmographical narratives, it's religious narratives, that are going into the election this year. I traveled to a Bernie Sanders rally here in Austin, Texas. I talk a little bit about that. I've got an interview with the writer James Payne, who was on the ground in Iowa volunteering with the Sanders campaign, and we talk a little bit about the aftermath of that. We go into the construction of the boomer brain prison, which is the sort of the mechanism of belief and mass media broadcast that has come to define the Democratic Party as the audience of television ages and seeks for reliable and comfortable mythologies that remind them of their youth, specifically during the Cold War. We talk about the parallels between this race and 1968, when Lyndon Johnson stepped out and a vacuum of establishment Democratic power created a unique, or at least unique up until this year, recipe for chaos. This is one of the most elaborate things that we featured on Encyclopedia Zone so far, and especially if you like the political coverage that we're doing here on the channel, I really hope you point your browser over to Encyclopedia.Zone and check it out. There are excellent illustrations throughout. Let me go down here. There are excellent illustrations throughout by Old Two Spoons, which is one of the aliases of the mysterious Super Predator Committee. Superpredator.zone, for those of you who aren't in the know, is the only place you can get 100% factual, unbiased political news and beautiful, beautiful artwork. There's a lot more coming from Super Predator very soon, and I hope to be able to talk to you about that in more detail. But for now, if you point your browser over to Encyclopedia.Zone, check out HRC 2020 Part 2. You'll be able to see these gorgeous pen and ink illustrations by the artistic geniuses over at Super Predators. So really hope that you'll enjoy that. And once again, I'm just kind of plugging for the update here. And this is almost 40 pages long, so I'm actually not going to read the whole thing. But I am going to read part 1 of it, which is called The Argument. So this is HRC 2020 Part 2, the first section. On the 23rd of February, I went to see Bernie Sanders speak at a rally. I live in Austin, Texas, and my state will hold its presidential primary on March 3rd. The senator from Vermont made the trip to materialize himself for his supporters. Until then, for me, and presumably for most others, the 2020 election was a purely virtual phenomenon. It came to us through written testimonies and broadcast arguments, live television and pre-recorded advertisements, and snippets of information cut up and rearranged into the videos and images and essays and cartoons, which are imprecisely identified as internet memes. When Bernie took the stage, it was the first time I had seen him with my own eyes, without relying on the interlocutor of a reporter or a camera. A member of the city council here in Austin, Greg Kassar, who is also the co-chair of Sanders' Texas campaign, spoke immediately before the senator and introduced him to the crowd. During his speech, he has asked the assembly to close their eyes. Let's take a moment of quiet to imagine a world where you're looking forward to the headlines the next day, he told us. Imagine a world where every single person in this audience lives with dignity and respect. It is possible, he said, and all it would take is the election of Bernie Sanders, an organizer-in-chief tasked with untangling the worst excesses of American imperial capitalism. Some people in the crowd closed their eyes, but most did not. The rally was held at Auditorium Shores beside the river, and the air was cold and held the scent of mud. Behind Kassar and Bernie was a stage populated by Sanders' campaign staff, standing on bleachers, and behind them was a massive Texas flag. The gray sky seemed always on the brink of rain, on the brink of a rain that never quite arrived, although a few dozen drops hit my face and neck during the moment of quiet. Against the clouds stood the black lattices of cranes, still at the moment, but involved in the ongoing work of elevating the south side of the Colorado River until it resembled downtown to the north, where monoliths of glass and steel watched the people beneath them with the fractured logo eyes of the Frost Bank anus and the multicolored Google G. The moment of quiet brought on a rush of nostalgia. While I was in high school, a few miles away from the rally's location and more than a decade ago, Texas mandated a moment of silence for all its public school students following a morning broadcast of the Pledge of Allegiance. It was as close to a school-mandated prayer as Texas government could legally come, and my left-leaning Art Magnets high school resented its conservative symbolism. Marianne Williamson, a former 2020 candidate for the Democratic nomination who ran on a platform espousing a New Age-inspired politics of love, spoke before Kassar. She officially endorsed Sanders at the rally. When I was a little girl growing up in Houston, she said, I had to put my hand over my heart like millions of others, and I took a pledge of allegiance. It was to a flag and to the principles on which it stands, liberty and justice for all. And the fact that as a little girl I put my hand over my heart and I pledged allegiance to liberty and justice for all turned me into a woman who gets really pissed when I see it not happening. Bernie, she implied, will fulfill the promise of that state-mandated prayer. Sanders, in his remarks, said that the limitation of our imagination is the problem we face today. We believe that only so much political change is possible, that the organs of our government are functioning poorly, and their practical utility to address the underlying flaws of our social system is limited. This is the wealthiest country in the history of the world, he said. Half our people should not be living paycheck to paycheck. This is America. We will provide a good quality life for all our people. I've lived on both coasts and been all over this country. I have seen the deserts and the cities and the haunts of billionaires where skyscrapers have begun to look like ziggurats, tombs of mirrored glass as dazzling as the pyramids of Giza before the pharaohs left their civilization to rot and the gold was stripped from their great monuments by rapacious and anonymous hands. I want very badly for Bernie Sanders' vision of the future to be borne out. I have seen too much human wreckage, wounded by poverty and pointless war and chemical pleasures, which for so many constitute the only material escape possible from the painful ignominy of American life. I can, if necessary, couch this desire in more pragmatic terms. I can say that no presidential candidate is capable of the kind of millennial change which would make a good quality life possible for all my countrymen, especially in our present situation of polarized gridlock in the Congress. I can say that Bernie's labor platform, which would legalize secondary strikes and strikes by federal employees, would tip the balance between management and labor in a productive way, and that his proposal to nationalize American healthcare system has broad support among the populace, and even if only partially achieved, would represent a significant improvement in quality of life. At its core, however, I recognize that Kassar's quiet is the spine of our politics. Every 4 years, our mass media leads the American people in a ritual meant to bring on the future of that media, which is why Kassar's utopia is first and foremost a world where you're looking forward to the headlines every day. Whatever else presidential politics are in the 21st century, they are primarily about directing the alter world of information in which all of us have some phantom existence as a producer, a consumer, and a vector of spread. I do not mean to pick on Kassar. In Seattle on December 14, 2019, the former mayor of South Bend, Indiana, Pete Buttigieg, promised a crowd at one of his rallies that a Buttigieg administration would be a presidency where you can turn on the news and have your blood pressure actually go down. Conversely, on February 25th, following a supposedly disastrous debate among Democratic candidates aired by CBS, there was much wailing and gnashing of teeth. The justice correspondent for The Nation magazine, Elie Mystal, summed up the broadcast this way: "Nobody won. Everybody lost. This was a night that makes democracy feel like a bad idea," which is probably the worst review any television show will ever receive. My contention is that presidential politics are not only one of the largest religions in America, they are in fact the religion of America. The cosmographical structure by which our vast and technologically sophisticated civilization interfaces with its individual members, providing them with the reality they occupy beyond their direct sensory and temporal limitations. It is fitting, given the economic structure of American civilization, that this religion is not a single fixed entity, with a single organized priesthood and text belonging to a widely accepted canon. Our religion is a marketplace. Americans participate in their politics primarily by choosing which source of information they rely on to describe it, which news they find convincing, and in which manner they are convinced by it. The reality of MSNBC is distinct from the reality of Democracy Now!, which is distinct from the reality of Zero Hedge or Bernie Twitter or 4chan's poll. And all of us form our political identities by creating a collage of these texts and speeches and records. We become evangelists for the cosmographies we have assembled. Presidential election years are venues for social combat on a massive scale, an opportunity for all of us to engage in debate with one another in the hopes that our chosen future will be borne out through the materializations of the ballot box. Kassar, speaking underneath those skeletal cranes, asked us to close our eyes and imagine good headlines as an inducement to, in 9 days' time, assume our places in line at our primary polling places and engage in the democratic ritual which will, supposedly, cause this imagined future to manifest. But what if the ritual accomplishes its goal? Sanders wins the most votes in the primaries, and yet he does not become the Democratic nominee for president. What if the results of this vote are not revealed at all? What if the imagination of a new world and new headlines to go with it is violently severed from the controlled marketplace of American political cosmographies, mediated by predictable information industries and reliable rituals? It's easy to forget, given the pace at which political information is delivered, but that's exactly what happened in Iowa, the first nominating contest of the cycle. It's also what the Democratic Party and its officials are threatening to do, in a more final way, at the upcoming convention in Milwaukee. 2020, apparently, is a year for walking on thin ice. And that's just a little taste of HRC 2020 Part 2. You can read the rest of it once again at encyclopedia.zone. Check it out right now. I apologize if there's any typos. We're rushing this thing out, and it's hard getting copy editing done and keeping the whole thing current. But if you do find them, just let me know on the forums or in the comments down below. And if you like what we're doing here at the channel, you can go to patreon.com/HRC2020. Help us out. Really appreciate it. Anyway, that's it. Please go to the site. Check it out. Check out superpredator.zone for all your political, wild political art needs. And we will see you later this week with me and James are going to come back and kind of break down Super Tuesday, Pete Buttigieg dropping out, all that the crispy horse race shit that everybody appreciates. So we'll be back later this week with that, and you have an excellent one.